My friend brought a lion to a party that I was attending, then framed me for it after it went horribly wrong. I hired a lawyer to fight my case, and that's when I found out a disgusting truth about my friend. I 29 male got a text from my friend inviting me to a party he was hosting, and when I accepted he told me this party would be unforgettable. The party rolled around and right as it was beginning, he announced that he had something truly special for us. He took us all upstairs into one of his 7 bedrooms, and we saw a massive box-shaped item covered by cloth. He slowly pulled the cloth off, and behind it was a humongous cage with a fully grown lion. For some idiotic reason one dude walked up the cage and stuck his hand near it, and that's all it took for the seemingly calm lion to become triggered. It swiped at the guy's hand and managed to scratch it, then pounced on the cage and started hitting it. At that moment I wanted out. I turned around and left the room, and as I was downstairs I heard a shriek followed by everyone running down. I immediately bolted out the door trying to get as far away as possible. My car was parked a few blocks away, and I sprinted the whole way there. When I got to the car safely and began driving the entire ride home, I sat in silence as I thought about how I could have lost my life that night. I finally made it home, locked my doors and just sat there, trying to process what I just witnessed. It was like something out of a nightmare. I tried to calm down, telling myself that it wasn't my problem and that I was lucky to have made it out without getting hurt. A few days later I got a call from the police. Apparently, the party incident had been reported, and they were investigating. They told me that someone had been injured, and they needed my testimony since I was seen at the party. I agreed that I would tell them what I saw, and that would be the end of it. But then the cop on the phone said something that nearly made me drop the phone. He told me that someone had accused me of bringing the lion to the party. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him that wasn't true, and I wasn't even the host of the party. It was a man named Marcus. The cop told me that I needed to come to the station for questioning because several other witnesses claimed otherwise. I knew I needed a lawyer. The first person that came to mind was my uncle's old lawyer. A few years back, my uncle had been charged with embezzling money from the company he worked for. The evidence was stacked against him. They had bank statements, forged documents, everything. Everyone said he was going to prison for sure. But then the lawyer took the case. He picked apart the prosecution's evidence piece by piece. He found flaws and inconsistencies that no one else had noticed. It was like watching a master at work. By the time he was done, not only was my uncle acquitted, but the case had practically collapsed. To this day I didn't know if my uncle had been innocent or not, but I knew that this had saved my uncle's life and career, and from that moment on, our family swore by him. I knew hiring this man, I'll just call him Tommy, was going to cost me a lot. He didn't come cheap, but I didn't care. I needed the best, and Tommy was it. The thought of facing these charges without someone like him in my corner was scary. So, I picked up the phone and called him. I hoped he'd agree to take my case. He and I met up before heading to the station. He laid it all out for me, the charges I was facing, how serious they were and what kind of trouble I could be in if I couldn't prove my innocence. Reckless endangerment, causing harm. I could be looking at serious jail time. When we got to the station, they started questioning me about the party, the lion, everything. I told them the truth that I was just a guest and that I had no idea Marcus had planned something so reckless. But then they started bringing up witnesses. Multiple people claimed they saw me with the lion and said I was involved in bringing it to the party. I was stunned. These people were flat out lying. I kept telling the cops it was Marcus, but the more they pressed me, the more I realized just how deep this mess really was. Leaving the police station after that interrogation was one of the most surreal moments of my life. I just spent hours being questioned about something I had nothing to do with, and the cops were treating me like I was guilty from the start. By the time they were done, I was completely drained. As soon as I walked out of the station, there was Tommy, waiting for me. He was leaning against his car like this was just another day at the office for him. But I knew better. I knew that behind the calm persona, his mind was already working overtime to figure out how to get me out of this mess. As soon as I reached him, he didn't ask how it went. He didn't need to. We both knew this was just the beginning. We drove for a while in silence, and I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. Tommy said that he wasn't going to sugarcoat anything. He said it was going to be tough. The first thing we worked on was my alibi, but they already had people saying I did it. Tommy then told me that people lie, especially when they're scared, or they're trying to cover their own butts. He explained that we were going to dig into these so-called witnesses and find out who they really were, but the real key that we had to find was Marcus since he brought the lion in. He laid out the plan like it was nothing. Hearing him talk like that gave me a sliver of hope. Maybe there was a way out of this after all. Tommy and I started digging into what really happened that night. A few days into the case, Tommy called me into his office. As soon as I sat down he cut straight to the point. He said that he figured out what Marcus was up to. He told me that it was about his social media. I didn't understand the correlation between social media and the lion until he said that Marcus was known on Instagram for throwing these great Gatsby-sized parties, and the parties he threw were popular. It's how he built his brand, and up until a few months ago, his social media engagement was through the roof. But then he said he did some digging and found out that his engagement online had taken a nosedive recently after something happened to one of the girls at his party, and he didn't do anything about it. They tried to cancel him, and they succeeded. Likes, comments, and shares were way down, and considering how much he relies on that for his income, that was a big problem for him. He pulled up some screenshots on his computer and began showing me the stats. Tommy revealed that Marcus was desperate and knew he had to do something big to go viral again. That's why he brought that hungry lion out. He wasn't just planning this for fun. This was a calculated move. He'd been setting it up for weeks, reaching out to a dealer to rent the lion, planning the whole stunt down to the last detail. He was banking on the chaos to make the party go viral, to get people talking about him again, and to get those engagement numbers back up. It all started to click in my mind. Marcus had always been obsessed with his image and being the guy everyone talked about. But lately, he hadn't been getting the attention he craved. So, he decided to do something so outrageous that people couldn't help but notice. I asked him how he found out all of this, and he told me that he found a few key things. emails, text messages, and even a couple of posts on social media that didn't get much attention at the time. Marcus even dropped hints in some of his posts. He made comments about how his next party was going to be legendary and unforgettable. At the time, nobody thought much of it, but now it all adds up. Tommy told me that this was how we were going to prove my innocence. Marcus wasn't just throwing a party, he was orchestrating a viral event. But when everything went to hell, he needed a scapegoat. And since I was one of the few sober people at the party, I guess I was the easiest target. But now we've got the evidence to show it was all his idea from the start. Hearing Tommy lay it all out like that was both infuriating and a relief. It made perfect sense now. But even with that evidence, things kept getting worse. I started getting these creepy, anonymous messages telling me to drop the investigation. Someone even tried to break into my apartment one night. I knew Marcus and his buddies were behind it, trying to scare me off. But I wasn't backing down. Finding the lion dealer to testify against Marcus was not going to be easy. After all, it's not like there's a directory for people who rent out exotic animals. But Tommy was determined, and when he got an idea in his head, he didn't let go. He knew that if we could track down the person who supplied the lion, we could link everything back to Marcus and finally start clearing my name. It all started when Tommy found a trail of breadcrumbs on Marcus's social media and a few of his emails. He found a series of encrypted emails between Marcus and an anonymous contact, discussing special arrangements for the party. "I've got a lead," Tommy said. "These emails Marcus sent, they're encrypted, but we've managed to decode enough of them to see he was in contact with someone shady. They mentioned a meeting in a private chat on an encrypted messaging app. But here's the thing. Marcus isn't exactly a tech wizard, and he didn't cover his tracks as well as he thought." Tommy pulled up a map on his computer, showing a cluster of dots around a sketchy part of town. He met this person in an industrial area on the outskirts of the city, a place known for black market deals. It was a long shot, but Tommy had a plan. We went to the area, which was mostly filled with rundown warehouses and shady businesses. Tommy started asking around, subtly at first, pretending to be someone interested in renting an exotic animal for an event. Most people brushed us off, but eventually, word got around, and someone pointed us to a guy named Rick. After a few days of digging and following up on leads, we found him in a dingy warehouse on the edge of town. The place reeked of animal musk and decay, and the second we stepped inside, I felt nauseous. Tommy approached him with caution, knowing we had to play this just right. Rick eyed us suspiciously. We told him that a friend of ours recently rented out a lion, and we were trying to do the same. We told him that the friend sent us. He then asked who the friend was. We told him it was Marcus, and as soon as he heard that name, he eased up. We then asked him if he could give us the rundown on the price and how he knew Marcus. Rick hesitated, but then he shrugged. He said that Marcus came to him a few weeks before the party and said he needed something big, something that would get people talking. Rick told him a lion wasn't exactly a petting zoo attraction, but Marcus didn't care. Marcus paid him a small fortune for the lion and didn't ask too many questions. Tommy exchanged a quick look with me, a look that said, "We've got him." Rick's confession tied everything together. Marcus had sought out the lion dealer himself, paid top dollar and set the whole thing in motion. It was the final piece we needed to prove that Marcus had set up the stunt from the very beginning. After getting Rick's testimony, we headed to Marcus's neighborhood. I remembered that one of his neighbors had a doorbell with a camera that pointed directly across the street from Marcus. When we got there, we asked the woman living there if we could check her footage due to the incident. She agreed, and lo and behold, the camera had captured Marcus leading the lion into his house before the party. The footage was clear as day. It showed Marcus handling the lion and bringing it inside. The closer we got to revealing the truth, the more desperate Marcus became. It was clear that the walls were closing in on him, and he knew it. But instead of backing down, he pressed me more. At first, it was just anonymous threats and nasty messages left on my phone and a brick through my apartment window. But then things took a terrifying turn. One evening, after gathering evidence with Tommy, I was driving home. The day had been exhausting, but we were making real progress. I was driving down the road just a few blocks from my apartment when I noticed something was off. I pressed the brake pedal, but instead of stopping, there was nothing. The pedal sank to the floor with no resistance. My heart skipped a beat as I realized what was happening. I had no brakes. Panic set in as the car picked up speed. The streetlights were blurring past. I gripped the steering wheel and yanked the emergency brake. The car skidded, tires screeching as it swerved uncontrollably, but at least it was slowing down. I fought to keep it from crashing and steered hard to avoid oncoming traffic and parked cars. Finally, the car came to a stop, inches away from slamming into a tree. I sat there, trying to catch my breath and process what had just happened. It didn't take a genius to figure out that this wasn't an accident. Someone had removed my brakes, and there was only one person desperate enough to do something like this. Tommy was furious when I told him what happened. "This is beyond reckless. This is attempted unaliving," he said. Tommy told me that we'd get my car examined, and if we found proof of tampering, we'd have him on even more charges. With the footage, the dealer's testimony, and everything else we had, we went back to the cops. This time, they couldn't ignore the evidence. Marcus was arrested for endangering lives, reckless endangerment, and trying to frame me for the whole mess. He was screwed, and there was no way out for him this time. After everything came to light, the charges against me were dropped. I was cleared of any wrongdoing, but the whole experience left me shaken. I had been dragged through hell for something I didn't do, and it almost ruined my life. Marcus ended up facing a laundry list of charges and was looking at serious prison time.